The air in the conference room felt like stale ice, thick and heavy. Outside, the spring rain painted gray streaks down the floor-to-ceiling windows, matching the exact shade of dread settling in my stomach. My fingers, usually steady on the keyboard, were trembling slightly, hovering over the send button. Across the polished mahogany table, the faces of my legal team were impassive, waiting. This wasn't just a business deal, it was a verdict. Years of silent pain, gnawing suspicion, and bone-deep betrayal had led me here, to this moment where the click of a mouse would reshape 3 lives. My husband's, hers, and irrevocably mine. The rain outside intensified, hitting the glass like 1,000 tiny fists, a soundtrack to the storm gathering inside me. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, it helps me more than you know. Before the ice and the rain, there was just the hum of the server room and the late-night glow of my monitor. My business, this tech firm I'd built from a spare room and a shoestring budget, was my life. It was more than just code and clients. It was tangible proof of what I could create, what I could achieve alone. My hands, calloused from early days hauling server racks, now navigated million-dollar contracts. My husband, Mark, was part of the background hum. We'd been together since college, navigating the messy years, the ramen for dinner phase, the cautious optimism of those first few profitable quarters. He worked in corporate law, a steady, predictable path that allowed me the freedom to take risks, to pour every ounce of my energy, my passion, my very being, into this company. He was proud of me, or so I thought. He'd sit beside me sometimes, watching the graphs trend upwards, his hand on my shoulder, a quiet anchor in the unpredictable waters of entrepreneurship. Our life was comfortable, maybe a little predictable, but built on a foundation I believed was solid: mutual respect, shared history, and the quiet understanding that my work was not just a job, it was an extension of me. The profits were our shared future, intended for travel we never took, for a family we talked about but never quite planned, for the security we'd both craved when we had nothing. They flowed from my accounts, the company accounts I controlled, into our joint accounts, mingling and blurring until the origin point felt less important than the shared destination. That was the idea, anyway. The first crack in the foundation was so small, I barely noticed it. A large, unexplained transaction request flagged by our accounting software. It wasn't tied to any project, any vendor, anything I recognized. It was substantial, enough to raise an eyebrow. I queried Mark about it. He brushed it off. Something about an investment opportunity he was exploring. Didn't want to bother me with the details since I was swamped.
He'd handle it, he said.
It felt vaguely off, but plausible. Mark handled our personal investments. I handled the business. We had our lanes. I let it go, buried under a mountain of deadlines and client demands. But a tiny stone in your shoe can eventually cause a limp. Other things started shifting. Mark was working later, or so he said. He was less present when he was home, distant, preoccupied. Our easy intimacy faded, replaced by strained silences and polite questions about my day that felt rehearsed. He stopped asking about the business, with the genuine curiosity he used to have, the kind that came from a place of shared stake. Now it felt performative, a chore. My questions about his life were met with vague answers, deflections. The energy he used to bring home, even after a tough day in court, was gone, replaced by a kind of weary, secretive tension. My early struggles weren't just about finding the source of the mystery transactions. They were about navigating the growing chasm between us, the chilling sense that the person sleeping beside me was a stranger. I tried to talk to him, to bridge the gap. He'd get defensive, or worse, accuse me of being too stressed by work, projecting my anxieties onto him. His gaslighting was subtle at first, undermining my intuition, making me question my own perceptions. Was I just paranoid? Was I losing my grip? The weird transactions didn't stop. They became more frequent, disguised in different ways, routed through various personal accounts before disappearing into a digital void I couldn't trace, without raising a massive red flag that would scream suspicion. The amounts were inconsistent, but added up over weeks, then months, to a sum that was frankly alarming. It wasn't just small indiscretions. It felt like a deliberate, systematic drain. The business was thriving, hitting new revenue records, but the profits felt leaky. Like pouring water into a bucket with invisible holes. My focus fractured. I'd be in a crucial meeting, mentally reviewing quarterly projections, and a part of my brain would be screaming, "Where is the money going?" I tried accessing shared financial statements, but things were suddenly less accessible. Passwords changed, accounts were restructured. Mark had always handled that side, and now he used it as a shield. He'd sigh, tell me I was being unreasonable, that managing complex finances was stressful enough without my constant questioning. He made me feel like a suspicious, ungrateful wife rather than a partner who had built the wealth he was supposedly managing. The emotional toll was immense. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. My creativity, the engine of my business, sputtered. I felt like I was fighting a ghost, a shadow in my own home, a thief stealing not just money, but peace of mind, trust, the very air I breathed. Then came the phone call. A late afternoon, the kind where the office is winding down, the last rays of sun slanting through the blinds. It was my friend, Sarah. She didn't mean to drop a bomb. She just mentioned running into Mark at some coffee shop near the university downtown. He was with someone, she said, her voice tentative. A young woman. They looked cozy. Like, really cozy. My stomach plummeted. The pieces, the late nights, the distance, the secrecy, the draining accounts, they slammed together with sickening force. A mistress. It was such an old, cliché story. I felt a perverse kind of shock that it was my story. But the truth was darker, colder, more calculated than simple infidelity. It wasn't just about another woman. It was about her and what he was doing for her with my money. My suspicion turned into a relentless, burning need to know everything. I hired a private investigator, discreetly, through layers of shell companies I used for business acquisitions. I needed proof. Undeniable, irrefutable proof. The investigator was efficient, ruthless. The reports started coming back. Names, dates, locations. Photos. Mark and her, at restaurants I'd wanted to try with him, walking hand in hand near that university Sarah mentioned. And then the financial trail. The hidden accounts, the complex routing, the wire transfers. And the destination. The University of California, Berkeley. Payments tagged as tuition, student housing, fees. Large sums, correlating precisely with the missing profits from my business. She was a student, a graduate student, enrolled in the MBA program. And Mark, my husband, the man who shared my bed and my life, was using the money I had earned, the money I had poured my soul into creating, to pay for his mistress's elite business education. The midpoint shift wasn't a sudden shock. It was a slow, agonizing bleed followed by a hardening. The photos, the financial statements, the PI's detailed reports laid it all bare. He hadn't just betrayed me emotionally and physically. He had fundamentally disrespected and exploited the core of who I was and what I had built. My business wasn't just a source of income. It was my identity, my power, my shield. He had reached into my life's work and plundered it to build her future. This wasn't a mistake, a temporary lapse in judgment. This was cold, calculated malice. He hadn't just cheated on me. He had stolen from me, strategically, using my own success as the weapon against me. The money wasn't just money. It was potential, opportunity, security. And he had gifted it to his mistress, using the very profits that represented my sweat, my sleepless nights, my sacrifices. Every dollar he spent on her tuition felt like a personal violation, a slap across the face delivered using my own hand. The crisis deepened into an abyss. How could I have been so blind? How could he have been so cruel? The betrayal was so deep, so multifaceted. It poisoned everything. The office, once my sanctuary, felt tainted. Every successful deal, every profitable quarter, now felt like a cruel joke. The money was just fuel for his deceit. My home felt alien, hostile. Sleeping in the same bed as a man who was actively dismantling my life with my own resources became unbearable. I moved into a spare room, the silence between us thicker than walls.
He didn't ask why.
He barely seemed to notice. His world had shrunk to his secret life, funded by mine. I walked through my days in a haze of cold fury and profound sorrow. The grief for the marriage I thought I had was immense, a heavy cloak that threatened to suffocate me. But beneath the grief, something harder was forming.
Ice.
A glacial determination that froze the pain and replaced it with a razor-sharp focus. Divorce was inevitable, but it wasn't enough. Simply taking half of what remained after he'd siphoned off God knows how much felt like another form of being stolen from. And letting her walk away, MBA in hand, built on the foundation of my life, felt like an intolerable injustice. The source, the destination of the money, the MBA program, the university. The idea was audacious, almost absurd. But the more I turned it over in my mind, the more it felt not only possible, but necessary. A precise, surgical strike that would target the very instrument of his betrayal. It required leveraging the full extent of my resources, my network, my understanding of complex financial maneuvers, the very skills I had honed building my business, the skills he had underestimated and exploited. It wasn't about vengeance in a petty sense. It was about reclaiming agency, about demonstrating that the power he thought he could siphon off and redirect was still mine, and I could wield it in ways he couldn't possibly anticipate. I would not just survive. I would rewrite the ending using the narrative he thought he controlled. My determination hardened, setting like concrete. The game had changed. The plan was intricate, demanding absolute secrecy and swift execution. Acquiring a university wasn't like buying a small startup. It required navigating endowments, boards of trustees, political landscapes, regulatory bodies. But my company had grown exponentially. We weren't just a tech firm, we had diversified. Our holding company now included investment arms, real estate ventures, strategic partnerships with surprising reach. Over months, working in the shadows, leveraging connections made over years in the industry, my team and I executed a complex series of maneuvers. Strategic investments in university bonds, large anonymous donations earmarked for specific, influential departments, securing positions on key advisory boards through proxies, discreet conversations with powerful alumni and stakeholders who were open to significant new funding and influence. We weren't buying the university outright in a hostile takeover visible on the news. We were becoming an indispensable, dominant financial force within the university's ecosystem, gaining leverage and control through sheer financial power and strategic alignment with the institution's long-term goals that suddenly included prioritizing ethical conduct and the integrity of their student body, especially within their prestigious MBA program. It was quiet, relentless, and by the time it was done, my holding company held the kind of influence that made things happen. Decisions could be made. Policies could be enforced. Individuals could, shall we say, be reevaluated. The climax arrived on a crisp autumn afternoon, fittingly, back in a conference room. Not my office, but a sterile, impersonal meeting room within the hallowed halls of the university itself. I sat opposite Mark. He thought we were there to finalize aspects of the divorce settlement, maybe discuss the division of assets. He looked tired, thinner than I remembered. He hadn't anticipated the depth of my knowledge or the cold calculation of my response. He had expected tears, shouting, maybe a public scene. Not this quiet, controlled demolition. Beside him sat her. Let's call her Anya. Young, ambitious, radiating a confidence that made my blood run cold, knowing where it came from. She was likely there as his support, unaware she was walking into the crosshairs. She probably saw me as the pathetic, discarded wife. The university dean was also present, looking uncomfortable but resolutely professional. My lead lawyer did the talking, his voice calm, clinical. He started with the financial audit we had commissioned, tracing the flow of funds from my business, through Mark's accounts, directly to the university, specifically to Anya's student ID number. Every tuition payment, every housing fee, itemized, laid bare. The numbers didn't lie. Mark shifted in his seat, his face paling. He stammered something about joint accounts, shared funds, his right to use our money. Then came the twist. My lawyer didn't argue about the funds. He pivoted. He explained the recent significant financial restructuring involving the university, the new major partnerships and funding streams secured by my holding company. He detailed the new ethical guidelines, the emphasis on integrity in admissions and student conduct, especially for those benefiting from significant financial aid or demonstrating questionable financial origins for their funding. The dean cleared his throat. Ms. Anya Sharma. He addressed her directly, his voice formal. Following a comprehensive review prompted by our new financial oversight protocols, irregularities have been discovered regarding the provenance of your tuition and living expense funding for the MBA program. It appears these funds originated from sources obtained through, shall we say, irregular means, specifically linked to a major benefactor's assets without proper authorization. He glanced briefly at Mark. Furthermore, it indicates a potential breach of our student conduct code related to academic integrity and financial transparency. Anya's confident smile vanished. She looked confused, then alarmed. Mark's eyes darted between the dean and me, a flicker of pure panic replacing his earlier bluster.
He still didn't get it.
He thought this was about the money, maybe trying to reclaim it. Given the severity of these findings, the dean continued, his voice unwavering, and in accordance with the university's revised policies and the terms of our new foundational partnerships which emphasize the highest ethical standards, the University of California regrets to inform you that your enrollment in the Master of Business Administration program is hereby revoked, effective immediately. You are expelled. Anya gasped a small, sharp sound. Expelled?
But why?
My grades are excellent. My funding is. It's handled. She looked at Mark, her eyes wide with sudden fear and confusion. Mark finally froze. The color drained completely from his face. He looked from Anya's crumbling composure to my calm, cold expression, then back to the dean and my lawyers. He saw the trap closing, the walls I had built with his own stolen bricks. He had used my business to pay for her future. I had used the power of that business to erase it. He thought he was safe because the money was in shared accounts, his legal argument prepared for a financial fight. He never imagined I would weaponize the destination of the funds, leveraging my financial power not just to reclaim money, but to dismantle the very thing he had built for her with my resources, within an institution I could now influence. He was blindsided. Utterly, completely blindsided. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He wasn't just caught. He was checkmated in a game he didn't even know he was playing. Anya started crying, quiet, heartbroken sobs. Her dreams, her investment of time and effort, her future, meticulously planned and funded by my stolen money, were dissolving before her eyes. She wasn't looking at Mark anymore. She was looking at me, the woman she'd likely dismissed as irrelevant, the woman who had just, with quiet precision, erased her from the prestigious program she had been so close to completing. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty and cold. The satisfying rush I'd anticipated was replaced by a profound weariness. I had won, yes. I had delivered a consequence that was precise, targeted, and undeniably linked to the source of the betrayal. He had paid for her MBA with my money. I had used that same financial power, amplified by my business, to take the MBA away. It was a perfect, brutal symmetry. But the cost had been immense. My marriage was ashes. Years of my life felt tainted. The woman weeping across the table, her face streaked with mascara, was a casualty, yes, but also a reflection of the collateral damage of his actions, and now mine. Mark just sat there, shattered, his carefully constructed world imploding. He had built his deceit on the foundation of my trust and my hard work, assuming my power was just a passive source of income he could redirect. He forgot that the mind that built the business was also capable of strategy, of patience, of devastating countermeasures when pushed to the limit. The aftermath was quiet, anticlimactic in its way. The divorce went through swiftly. He had no fight left in him. He lost more than just assets. He lost face, credibility, the respect of colleagues who heard whispers. Anya disappeared. I never saw or heard from her again. The university moved on, their new partnership heralded as a major step forward. My business continued to thrive, stronger, more secure, the leaks sealed. But the profits felt different now. Heavier, weighted with the knowledge of what they had enabled and what they had destroyed. Rebuilding my life wasn't about finding joy immediately. It was about finding equilibrium. The hole he left wasn't one of love or companionship, but one of violated trust and stolen potential. I learned that the most dangerous betrayals are often the ones committed by those closest to you, using the intimacy of your relationship as a weapon. I also learned that my strength wasn't just in building. It was in defending, in adapting, in wielding the power I had created, even when it felt cold and lonely. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Anya, wherever she is, and the future she had mapped out using my money. I wonder if she understands the true cost, the layers of betrayal, the sheer, brutal irony of it all. And I think about Mark, probably adrift, defined now not by his steady career, but by the spectacular, self-inflicted ruin of his life. The rain has stopped now. The sun is breaking through the clouds, casting long shadows across the conference room floor. The air feels clearer, but still carries a chill. The silence isn't empty. It's filled with the echoes of a battle fought and won, but not without scars. I survived. I reclaimed what was stolen. I showed them the true power of the woman they thought they could break. But the taste of victory is complex. It's not sweet. It's sharp, metallic, like the taste of cold, hard rain. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.